Hello everyone, nice to see you again. This is the channel PeaceIsSubmitting, and today, if I saw some new comments on a previous video I had titled "Islam, is it the religion of the sword?" or something similar to that, and I got a few comments, and one of the main arguments was that were certain passages from Hadith. Now, if you're not familiar, Hadith is supposed, and I say supposed because I believe it to be contradictory and untrue, supposed sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. And there's also Sunnah, which is supposed to be the actions of the Prophet. So, by studying the Quran, we can see that Hadith was never authorized by God. It was never permitted for the Prophet to even give any hadith or sayings or teachings other than what he is given in the Quran. And so I wanted to start out with this verse here. It's from Surah 4, Women, and it is verse 82. Why do they not study the Quran carefully? If it were from other than God, they would have found in it numerous contradictions. And this is indeed what we see in Hadith and Sunnah. And I'll try and quote a couple later, but we see a lot of contradictions, and even Muslims today don't agree on unanimously agree on which Hadith to follow and which not to follow. So what you see, the traditional Islam, the extremist Islam, this is not what God gave us. And this is why I'm urging people who oppose Islam to read the Quran itself. And if you have an argument against the Quran, then you can bring that up, because the Quran is the only thing that was delivered to the Prophet. And anything that came after were either by ignorant people, enemies, maybe even people with good intentions, but they were just writing stuff down that they thought they heard from one person, like in that game you used to play as a kid, where you hear one thing and by the time it gets to the 10th person it's a completely different sentence. So let's take a look at search. We're going to search for the word hadith in the Quran. And hadith, search. Okay, so let's start here. Have they not looked at the dominion of the heavens and the earth and all the things God has created? Does it ever occur to them that the end of their life may be near? Which hadith besides this do they believe in? And we can keep looking. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These are just 9 verses that I pulled up, which name hadith by name. And hadith does mean sayings, stories, and so on. And it's saying, let them produce a hadith like this if they're truthful. And the enemies actually took up this challenge. And here it's referring to the Quran as the hadith. 1 second. 7750. Which hadith other than this do they uphold? So we see just some evidence here that hadith isn't something advocated by God in the Quran. And now I'm just going to look for a couple verses I wanted to quote here about the Prophet Muhammad not being authorized, and he fulfilled his mission, so I don't believe he ever did give teachings other than the Quran which he was given. So here we go. Okay, 6940. Okay, Okay, this is in the chapter Incontestable, starting at verse 40. This is the utterance of an honorable messenger, not the utterance of a poet, rarely do you believe, nor the utterance of a soothsayer, rarely do you take heed. A revelation from the Lord of the universe. Had he uttered any other teachings, now we're referring to Muhammad here, we would have punished him. We would have stopped the revelations to him. None of you could have helped him. So, in these few verses here, we see that the Prophet Muhammad had one job, to deliver the Quran. And had he uttered any other teachings, he would have been punished. And the revelations would have stopped. So, there's just one set of verses that tell us that Hadith is not authorized by God. And I think there are a couple more verses here. Sorry, I'm just looking at some notes. And okay, let's look at 1773. Okay, this is chapter 17, titled The Children of Israel. And this is verse 73. Excuse me. They almost diverted you from the revelations we have given you. They wanted you to fabricate something else in order to consider you a friend. So here are people that may have claimed to follow the Prophet. Maybe they were hypocrites, or maybe they didn't disbelieve at all. And they wanted something else. The Quran wasn't enough for them. And once the Prophet died, and it wasn't until, 150 to 250 years later that Hadith started being written down and sprouted up. So these same people we see here started fabricating that something else that they wanted. And we know it's a fabrication because it's a contradiction. Okay, and now this is a brief video. We can go into hours, and I mean there's books filled with evidence against Hadith. So I'm just gonna highlight some points, God willing. And today I forgot to say, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, so forgive me. May God forgive me and guide me to do better next time. Okay. So, just give me 1 second here. Oh, here we go. Okay. I should have made this window bigger so I could actually highlight this. Okay, but I'm gonna try and fit it in. So here's evidence of from a book called Koran, Hadith and Islam, that even Hadith itself is contradictory, and people who follow Hadith are contradicting themselves. They don't follow their own teachings, that's what it says. So, okay, this is going to be the Arabic image of that. Then here it is in English. Abi Sa'id al-Khudri, may God be pleased with him, reported that the Messenger of God, may God exalt him and grant him peace, had said, "Do not write anything from me except Quran. Anyone who wrote anything other than the Quran should erase it." So there's another piece of evidence from Hadith itself that's contradictory to the Quran. It's even saying, don't write anything from me except Quran, and yet they follow the Hadith, which are writings besides the Quran. So we see why God has made these people, or why they themselves have chosen the path of evil, because they followed something other than what they were authorized to follow. And you'll clearly see that when you speak to people who are strong in this traditional belief that it's not just the Quran, it's also Hadith and Sunnah that you have to follow. You'll see that these people are far astray. This isn't what God gave them, and unless they go back to this ultimate source that God gave them, this final testament, then they're always going to have people arguing against them, and it's a valid argument. When we get mad at terrorists or whatever, it's most of their teachings about, the prophet consummating his marriage with a 9-year-old, the 70 virgins if you kill yourself, all that, none of that's in the Quran, by the way. It's all hadith. It's all these stories and teachings, and it clearly contradicts the Quran. So before I clear out here, I think there was another one I wanted to show you. Okay. Here's another little passage from the same book. Okay. I don't know if I can fit this in here. Anyways, there we go. Zayd ibn Thabit, the Prophet's closest revelation writer, visited the Khalifa Muawiyah more than 30 years after the Prophet's death and told him a story about the Prophet. Muawiyah liked the story and ordered someone to write it down. But Zayd said, "The Messenger of God ordered us never to write anything of his hadith," as reported by Ibn Hanbal. So, I mean, I don't know how to make it any more clear, and we can actually. There's a lot more arguments, but people are gonna close the video right around here anyway if it gets too long. So if there is an argument in the Quran that people want to bring up, please comment and we'll address that. But if there's an argument about hadith and you're interested in seeing more evidence, in fact proof that hadith is not from God, then ask me and I can refer you to books, free online articles and books that have been written all about this. If I were to go through it, I'd be here for hours. So peace be upon you. I hope that helps you understand where the corruption of Islam, or what so-called Muslims today call Islam, comes from. And you'll see this if you go to, when I was a traditional Muslim, when I was a kid, following this, just going to the mosque with, whichever one of my traditional relatives or whoever, people have, basically kicked God out of their mosques. They focus more, a lot of mosques, I'm not speaking for all of them, but a lot of mosques are focusing on hadith, on the Prophet, which they have set up as an idol. They don't literally pray to him, but they focus on him more than they focus on God, and as such they've set him up as an idol, and this has led them astray. So God willing, maybe they'll read, and everyone else, now that it's a big time for people to start learning about Islam and find out what's going on with it, they'll read some of this stuff and it hits you. It goes, okay, oh, that's why the world is in the state it's in. It's because people are following these false teachings. So God willing, I hope that helped, and thank God for making this possible. And if you have any comments about hadith or whatever, or any future subjects you want me to address, please let me know, and take care.